Hello, we can go ahead and get started with some announcements. First off, it's beginning of the week, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we are going to be going over. So we are actually going to kind of take a look at some items, and this is going to be one of the main lectures that you'll have, and then everything else that we are going to go over, it really does depend on your final project. And these ones here, you may or may not use in every single project here of those next topics here. So with this, we are going to go ahead and go through authentication, both today and tomorrow, with the context API. And then we're actually going to review the stuff we did last week, especially with some styling stuff, some context API, and other stuff that we covered last week. We'll be reviewing them this week as well. So that's the main thing of this week. The new topic is going to be the auth, as well as some flash messages. And that is something that we'll talk about what that is. And then on Wednesday, we are going to be talking about production servers. And with production servers, what that means is that this is what steps you would need to take to push your website in a live environment. So this is how you are able to push your website into a application, and that application will allow you to share it with everyone else. So we'll go over those steps as well. And then whatever time that we have left, we'll be using that as a review to finish up what we didn't finish up inside of the auth lectures that we have here. So that's kind of the main topics that we'll be covering, is that we do have a little bit of newer ones, but we are going to mainly review stuff that we did last week, especially the context API, because we actually need it for authentication here as well. Inside Thursday, that is when your doctor's appointment assignment will be due. And then we're actually going to slowly talk about primary portfolios. So what that is that is going to be your final projects. And with your final project, we are going to go ahead and discuss about them and kind of see what you want to do. And over the next few days, you will be put into teams, and then based off of the projects that we'll have. And with that, we are able to go ahead and assign you to your project with that. So how that would work is that you'll be mainly going to be working on that project instead of your homework. So inside of that project and you'll be put all in a team or all in a different team, you'll be working on that throughout the whole entire rest of the time. So the class will end on the 3rd of August. And that is when also the items are due of the final project. So you'll have around a month to work on it. And most of the stuff is going to be outside of class. Because if you kind of see here, we actually shift our schedule up a bit. And we do have some holidays coming up as well. So during class, I am going to, later on next week, going to switch the schedule. Instead of having Monday through Wednesday lecture, I'm going to do Monday and Tuesday lecture if there is a Monday and Tuesday. And with that, anytime that I have left, I will leave to your final project, but there's no guarantee because some of these lectures, they might go on for the full 3 hours. Some of them, they might be super quick. Really depends on the topic that we are going to be discussing. So a lot of it is going to be Wednesday and Thursday, which is your main project days. And that is where we are going to work mainly on your final projects. But again, that doesn't give you a lot of time to work on it inside of class. You have around 8-ish days in class to work on it. So don't rely that you'll finish this whole entire project in 8 days. You have to really go ahead and utilize your weekends as well as before and after class to get some of the project items done. Because it is going to be a slightly bigger project than normal. It's going to have a little bit more features and a lot of styling here as well. So even though that the due date is ending on the 3rd, we would like to have it done around the Thursday or Friday before. Because at the last few days here, that's mostly going to be kind of tidying up the project, making sure everything looks good, and making sure that the final items are done with the project. So there won't be as much coding on these ones, on these days here. Most of it is going to be on the month before then there. But yeah, that's kind of how it is from there of what's going on. Something else to keep in mind is that we don't have class next Monday because of July 4th of the holiday that we have. And then next Saturday is going to be our hackathon, our second hackathon. So with your second hackathon, this one, I am going to kind of give you a kind of a head start, but this will be a build your own type of project. So from now till then, just go ahead and think of a nice project that you want to build for the hackathon for next Saturday. And then over on that Thursday that we will be together, we'll go ahead and kind of stop class a little bit early and go ahead and talk a little bit more about your final project or your final projects as well as your hackathon projects. So that would be a build your own. You can just now think about ideas of what you want to build, and then you and your team will go ahead and do that kind of process inside of your Saturday hackathon there. But yeah, that is what is coming up, and we're almost rounding up everything here. But any questions of what's coming up or what we are going to be covering? Go ahead, Anna.
So the hackathon one, is it with teammate or by ourselves?
What teammates?
So when, well, that means when we discuss what do we want for the hackathon too, that means we need to know who's teammate, something like that, right?
Yeah, so you'll just come up with the ideas, and then on Thursday, when we assign you to teams, you can talk to your team of which idea you want to build.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, that's a good question. Any other questions?
One more question. So I'm looking at the video. So for the doctor, can I ask that question? So for the doctor appointment, so like each doctor, you open the doctor profile and have the list of the appointments that doctor have, right? And then you can add appointments. So in real life scenario, where will the doctor like kind of like all the appointment can be like organized with certain day and time, so you know when the time or the day is not available, or when we do the back end, the data, we can like available time or not available time. Is there any if we want to add on something like that, is that some direction we can do, some like watch some video for YouTube how people do that, or is that a function?
I would mainly focus on the main application of the doctor's user appointments and then do all of the CRUD actions first. And then afterwards, you can mainly focus on the appointment side of trying to see which appointments are available and which are not available. That one, the only resources would be something that you already have, and it's just using a if statement, right? So you can see that if they choose the date when they submit on the form, if that is already taken inside of the database.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Nice. But yeah, any other questions about what is coming up in the next few days/weeks? Sweet. So let's go ahead and talk about our topic of authentication and how we are going to be working with authentication. So currently inside, this is our LMS application. You can go ahead and see that we have a lot of our stuff, be able to see every single detail of all of the different data inside of our database. So how that is written inside of our controller is that if I go ahead and do the index, it will show me all of the users and all of the users' information. Same thing with the course as well. It will go ahead and show me all of the course. And then if it's a parent-child relationship, it will show me that particular parent, but children as well. So this works if that was the case. If I want to show all of the users or all of the courses, then this is what you should do. But that is, if we were to do it in other applications, it won't really work as well because you're actually giving a lot of information that you should be giving. So for example, if I were to have this code inside of a banking app, let's say that we are building a bank, and then with that bank, you have different users, and different users have a lot of different accounts, like a savings account, checkings account, student account, all those different accounts within the bank. So if I go ahead and write this code and continue on doing it like this, what this will do is that when I go ahead and go into the banking website, it will show me all of the users that are inside of that bank. Regardless of if they are that user or not, it will show me all of the users of that bank. If that's your intention, then this would work perfectly. But for the most case, you don't want to do that quite yet, right? So usually at a bank, it doesn't give you all of your information quite yet until you are being authenticated. And how they do that at a bank, they will ask for your ID or your account number or any kind of information that to verify of your authentication. So that's what we are going to be working on. So instead of us going to give you all of the information when you land on a site, we're going to ask for some verification information. And with that, once it is verified, then we can show you only your account information. So if we go to the next level, if I go to accounts.all, that will let me go ahead and see everyone's account. We're not able to do that. So that's why we are only going to be showing you only the user's account of what we have. So that's more typically of how your authentication would be used, is that you can't really use our site yet until you are verifying that you are a user. So that is what we are going to be working with. So that's our main topic for the next 2 days, is going to be Rails authentication, which is going to verify the user's information, make sure that they are authenticated, and then how we are able to do that. And then the other topic that I want to talk about are Flash messages. So with our Flash messages, currently when we have errors, it will go ahead and prompt our console or prompt our server. But in reality, a user doesn't really know how to use any of those tools, right? They don't look inside of the terminal or look inside of their server if they're filling out a form and their form isn't working. So what we would typically do is that if an error does occur, we need to give some sort of a flash message or a pop-up message. And that could be anything. It could be good news, it could be bad news, or just informative messages for the user. So a really good thing for flash messages are error messages. So when they fill out the form, that could go ahead and let them know, like, hey, you need to have your password be 8 characters. Or it can go ahead and say, hey, you are successfully logged in. So those are what flash messages are, is that the ability to provide messages for the user. So we'll be doing some of that inside of our code. And instead of console logging our items, especially for error handling, we're just going to use flash messages. So that way the user can also know what the message is as well. So that's the other topic that we'll be talking about. But first, let's just go ahead and talk about Rails authentication, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later. So with Rails authentication, the main thing is to add in a user base for a particular Rails application. And this already is available for us. We just need to go ahead and configure the tools for us to go ahead and use. Rails is a really good tool for it to use because everything that is going to be used within Rails, it actually inherits from the Rails engine. And the Rails engine is to be able to do the same thing at the same time, all within the same application. So that means that when we have different users logged in, you don't have to wait until that user is done. You can have another user logged in at the exact same time as another user that is already using the app. So that is how the Rails engine will really benefit our case here. So there are a few things for us to kind of take note of. The main thing is that we are actually going to talk a little bit about those main things. But luckily for us, all of those problems that we need to encounter, we actually have a simple solution for that. And that would be a package that we'll be using. So let me kind of go over of what it will take to kind of go through authentication just by itself, or if you were to do it from the ground up. It is a lot of work. That's why we are using a package to kind of have that heavy load kind of do that for us. So if you were to go ahead and work on authentication yourself, this kind of goes into a little bit of a topic inside of cryptography. And the main thing about this is more for cybersecurity. And the part that we need to make sure of is if the user's information is safe. So the main thing that when they are inputting their information on our website is that they would sometimes need to pass in some personal information, right? Their name, email, maybe even their address, credit card number, even their password for the site. We need to make sure that that information is safe. And that is something that we would need to develop rather than having this cybersecurity team and a big company do that for you. So there are little things that we can do inside of our code that helps out with that. If we were to do this on our own, essentially what we would need to do is to whatever they type in within the password bar, it will go ahead and hide the password so it's unreadable. So even though that this is the password, this is what it will translate to. So that way, if you go ahead and look at it within the database or anything like that, you won't actually see the value of the password. So that's kind of the end goal of this type of problem. One way that you can do it is called hashing. And what hashing is this is more of a cryptography term. The other hashing is within like keys and values. But with this one, it actually takes in your password and throws it into a hashing algorithm. And what the hashing algorithm is just a big program that go ahead and uses something like the Caesar cipher, 32-bit or 64-bit, and it can go up and up from there. And the more bits there are, the more stronger it has within the hashing algorithm of how many sets of characters and other stuff that it uses inside of there. And that is how it will go ahead and mix up your password, is that it will go ahead and mix it up with whatever that the algorithm uses to go ahead and do that. And it also acts as a digital fingerprint. So it will go ahead and know that this password will then be connected to this user. So how that would work is that, let's say we can do something as simple as Caesar cipher. Essentially what the Caesar cipher is back then in the way back Roman Empire, there was a good conqueror named Julius Caesar. And one of the things that he liked to do, especially to communicate with his war generals, was to go ahead and use something like the Caesar cipher. So essentially, he took the Roman alphabet, which is a lot different than this, and he actually shifted the letters of however many characters over. So for this example, this will shift it over 3 elements that we have to the left. So that way that when you go ahead and translate a particular word like dog, that will go ahead and it will translate this into whatever cipher that we have. So A is equal to X, B is equal to Y, C, and etc. and so forth from there. So that will go ahead and give dog, but then what it will actually produce is this one right here, which is the cipher. And that would work. It will still mix up our information up. And you can't really know that this is actually the word that it is of what it came from. So if you were to code this out, it would be the password coming in, and then inside of your Caesar cipher of however it is that you're doing it, it will go through that Caesar cipher. And then you can also put it of how many times it will go ahead and run that particular code. But what problems do you see here? What is the problem with something like the Caesar cipher here? Does anyone see any problems?
Eventually, it could be cracked pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the main problems is that it is reversible, right? So if you already know how many letters is shifted over, and if you also know how many times that it has been run through, you can eventually unscramble this. So if I know that this is shifted over to the right 2 times or 1 time, I can go ahead and do the reverse of that and then get the same exact result as I have there. So even though the Caesar cipher works, you actually want something a little bit more complex and something that you are not able to reverse. So this would work, but it would be a bad example. So you need something that is not reversible. So that's why a lot of hashing algorithms, it'll let you use their library, but it actually won't tell you the code. So those are oftentimes private repository, but then you can use them in a public way where you can go ahead and have your password or sensitive information go ahead and also mix up your information as well. So there's a lot of them out there, and I'll show you what those are as well. The other thing is that how hashing works is that if you go ahead and do password, because it does act as a digital fingerprint, it will go ahead and give you the password, because if you match up with the digital fingerprint with the actual person, it will kind of know how that would work from there. So hashing itself, you would need to have a really good hashing algorithm, so something that is not reversible. And you also need to have something a little bit more complex with what we are doing with just hashing alone. So that's where a little salt comes in. And this isn't the one that you put for seasoning. This actually adds a small piece of data before it is hashed. So instead of just passing in the password or the whatever the string is that we are going to be saving, we're also going to pass in a little bit more information with that. And that is what the salt is. So that could be other letters, other characters, whatever that small data is, that will then go ahead and be passed through the hashing algorithm. And with that, that will give us a really unique one. And even if they did reverse it, they don't know which one is the password. They also don't know which one is the salt. So that's why it is really good to also include both of those when you are hashing with that. But then this will take a long time for us to figure out. This will actually take even more time that we have left within the course. We would have to figure out a hashing algorithm, have to figure out a good salt, and then we have to test it out, all to keep our password to not be cracked within our database. Luckily for us, the bcrypt gem actually does all that and more for us. So we don't really need to worry about that. A gem called bcrypt does that for us, and that is what we will be using that will go ahead and hide the user's information. But that's only one part of authentication. The other parts of authentication is to have different sections that will go ahead and it will keep the user in its own unique bubble, and it will kind of keep track of what it is that they're doing inside of that bubble. And then you also have to worry about the user and the user's information that you are storing and passing around. So you have to pass around if the user is logged in or not, and to see if you need that information in other pages as well, like a profile page or the nav bar. And then you have to also think about other stuff that you would need for authentication. Go ahead, Brian.
Is there coding to standards, like say for like PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance? Is some of this like would bcrypt, if you use that in there, is that considered compliant with those standards, or is that not something that they take into account?
Really depends on what it is that you are working with. Because I know if you are building like a hospital app, they do require almost everything to be encrypted. So you might need a little bit more than the bcrypt gem, but that one might solve some issues. But I think you can solve a lot more with different types of data that you need to encrypt for sure. But yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, bcrypt itself won't go ahead and include everything. You have to kind of define what it is that you want encrypted. So it's a little bit more work to it as well. But yeah, that's a good question. But that is a good start of where you would do all of those compliance stuff that you would need. But yeah, so those are all the stuff that you would need to worry about. And again, that would take a lot of time for even each of these sections here. So that's what we are going to need to do. But luckily for us, we actually have a Ruby gem that will work both in front end and back end that will kind of help us out with some of these items. So the package that we are going to be using is called Device, and it is a fully functioning authentication that will go ahead and run on any sort of application that we'll be doing. And this is a very common one. There are other ones, and you can also do it yourself, but it will take some time if you were to do it yourself. It also uses tokens and cookies to go ahead and use settings as well. And all of the stuff is already written out, and it actually takes care of a lot of stuff for you. So it already takes care of the models for you and the controller for the user already, mostly for authentication. And all that you are able to not worry about, and Device will go ahead and handle that itself. So that is something that is really cool. So then we can just mainly focus on what comes after the authentication. The other thing is that it works for all the models we use in the controller, and it also allows you to go ahead and sign in multiple users at once and gives you the user information with a really good documentation of what we'll have. And here are the main features that Device comes with. And it actually covers the stuff that we need to work with and more, even if we need to add in additional security features for the authentication stuff here. So the first one is going to be database authenticable. That will go ahead and store and encrypt your password inside of your database in a safe place. So that way you can't even get to your password within the database. It uses the bcrypt gem to do that. And if you want to encrypt more stuff, you can use the bcrypt gem to go ahead and encrypt even more user information. Like let's say you're storing their credit card number or their social security number, you can also go ahead and need to add in that code to go ahead and encrypt those as well. Omni-offable, that will go ahead and allow you to log in with Facebook or Twitter. It will allow you to go ahead and work with those if you are able to. Confirmable is the ability to go ahead and confirm the email. If you were to sign up for a particular website, that will send you an email to confirm your account. Recoverable will go ahead and reset your password and send you reset instructions to reset your password. Be able to sign up users. Either you can do this yourself or you can have this be something that they can do themselves as well. Rememberable is remembering the login info. Trackable is where you can track how many times they logged in, their IP address, and HTTP requests that they have there. You can also do timeout when they are on too long. So if they're not interacting at all, they can go ahead and be timed out. This one will take care of all of our validations. And this one will take care of our validations for our email and password. So it makes sure that the email is present. It also makes sure that the email is unique. And then it's also make sure that the email is in the right format. It's with the @ format of whatever it is. The other thing is that for a password, it will go ahead and make sure that you have a password confirmation as well as the length of the password, which is the length of 8 characters long. So we actually don't really need to worry about the validations for email and password because that's already handled for us, which is awesome. And then it also gives us lockable where you can lock it out a user if they weren't able to log in a certain amount of times. So those are all of the features, which is awesome. And some of them we'll be using for sure. Other ones we might not be touching on, but that is something that the device gem really helps us out with, especially with authentication. It also gives us some other information like the user object and who is logged in and who is not. Then we can go ahead and see what that is with that there. Go ahead, Anna.
You were mentioned about like with like Facebook or whatever. Does that mean they don't need to actually set up a password with the website we build? They can just send them to the Facebook, log in, and then if they log in, then they have account with us. Is that what you?
Yes. Yep. That's what this is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what omni-offable is. That one you would need to go ahead and also set it up with whatever tool it is you're using. So whether you are working with Facebook, you have to configure Facebook into your website or Twitter into your website, things like that as well. That's a good question. So yeah, and then there are also other helpers that we'll be using. So that will go ahead and help us out to fill out the next level that we are able to use. And the main thing that we are going to be focusing on is the MVP. So what the MVP means is that it is the minimum viable product. And you'll start to hear this term a lot, especially in the next few weeks when we work on our final project, is that it is going to be nice to work on other features and how to style things, but the main thing is going to be the main features. For example, for the to-do list, it might be nice to go ahead and add images and add a bunch of animations and things like that. But the MVP, which is going to be the main features that you should be focusing on, is going to be be able to create, add, read, and update. Those are mostly going to be your CRUD actions, and those will always be the MVP. Anything else, those are just extra. You should mainly focus on the other ones before you focus on your other stuff that you have here. They're very similar to basic and bonus objectives. You have to make sure all of your basic objectives are done before you move on to the bonus. We'll talk about Flash messages, what we are going to be doing. Oh, wait, sorry. With this, device takes care of everything for the user, except for the views. So we have to go ahead and create the stuff for the React side, and then everything else should be all linked up. And then after that, every single level after that will go ahead and be the child of the user. So if you go ahead and have a particular application, how we are going to set up the tables is that everything will be a child of user. And that will depend on app to app, not every case, but in most cases, that was what it will be. So we'll be going to start off inside of a particular application today. Then next time tomorrow, we are going to go ahead and add in another model, and you'll kind of see what I mean by this one right here. The next thing that we are going to be talking about are Flash messages, and what they are is mainly going to be for error handling on any messages that we are displaying to the user through the browser. Inside of Rails, those are mostly going to be work with key value pairs. And then inside React, we could go ahead and do whatever we need to with that information. So we can go ahead and if there are any errors, we can go ahead and just grab the errors and display that inside of a alert, or display that somewhere on our page so it knows that what that message is. So that's how we are going to be using Flash messages, is that all it is just a hash. And then with that hash, we might need to go ahead and grab specific key value pairs, and that will go ahead and it will give us the right information that we need to from there. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and let's see. This is kind of an example that we won't be building this, but this is kind of how the models will kind of look like. So here we have three models. We have user, account, and then items. So that would be if we were to build out a banking application. So the user, we are actually going to have device worry about the user, and all the user will have is email and password. That's what will come with device, is that by default, it'll come with an email and a encrypted password. You can also go ahead and add in the first name and last name as well. That would also help as well, and that would work. After that, user has many accounts. What the account has, like the account name, that would be like checking, savings, student account. That's what that is for. And then the balance of the account, and then it belongs to a particular user. So each user should have their own account, and then users has many accounts there. And then for each account, it will have some items. What the items are going to be the title, amounts, deposit, if it is a deposit or if it is a withdrawal, and then the account ID from there. So the associations, especially after the device step, is that user has many accounts, account belongs to user, account has many items, item belongs to account. So you can kind of see how everything is a little bit shifted. So the user is considered the parent, the account is considered the child here. And then all of the controllers and models, those are all finished with the user. If we want to do something extra, we are able to do that as well. So that's kind of how we are going to be mapping out our models, is that it would be what device gives us, anything else we need to do, and then everything else will be a child of the user from there. So let me go ahead and show you that. Let me stack this notes out for your information. I just put this inside of a auth notes RB file, so you can go ahead and do that as well. So for this follow along, what we are going to do is that we're creating a brand new project that will be continuing on tomorrow. And some of the stuff that I am going to be doing, there are going to be some copy and paste parts, just because they're mainly from the documentation and stuff that we would need to do just to get device set up. So that's mainly because of the setup steps that we have from there. The other things is that there are going to be stuff that you'll see in every single type of project, and I'll point those out as well, because with those, you can go ahead and use that inside of another project, and it should work exactly the same. So let's go ahead and create a new project. We'll go ahead and go into our desktop and then our project directory before we do this, so we make sure that the project is able to be in a right place. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create a new Rails application. I'm going to call it React on Rails Auth Summer 21. That's what it will be called. The ROR and the underscore is connected, just a little bit shorter because of how I'm zoomed in. So yeah, that's what it will look like. And then it will go ahead and need the -d PostgreSQL and then --API. So we're just creating a whole new React on Rails project for now. Next thing up is to go ahead and go into that project. And then we are going to go ahead and do some housekeeping items. So first things first, let's go ahead and open this up. And then the reference, if you want to look at this, I didn't put in the reference sheet. Yeah, the reason being is that within the reference sheet, the stuff with the authentication, it does change from time to time. So that's why I don't have a reference sheet for it, just because of the stuff that we have changed from this core and last core. So as you can see here, there is no one for authentication. How you would find that would be inside of your lecture notes. So inside of Neo, that's where you can find all of the stuff that we are going to be doing next. Because that one is going to be the most up-to-date one. All the other ones may or may not be up to date. So after we go ahead and open this up inside of our text editor, let's go ahead and expand this so it's a little bit bigger for you all. We are then going to be adding our gems, just like always. So first gem that we are going to be adding is going to be your Pry gem and your Faker gem. The other gem that we are going to be needing is something that I am going to Slack out shortly, is this device token auth gem here. This is what will handle all of our stuff in the backend for authentication. It's this device token auth here. And with this device token auth, you can go ahead and search up their library. I'll send this out for you all as well. But there are some configuration steps that we need to do afterwards, after we go ahead and install this particular package. So let me go ahead and Slack this out. It has to be this one because this is the newer package. If you just did this one here, that'll grab an older one and that won't be compatible with this Rails version, because we do have the newest up-to-date Rails version. This version here will work with the Rails version that we currently have. So here is the gem file. And then here is the gems that we'll be adding. And this one down here, that should be right under the React cores one. Or yeah, the rate cores. So go ahead and copy that. And it should be a very long line. And we'll go ahead and paste that. That's the main one. It's okay if you don't have Faker or Pride for today. The main one is going to be this one here. That one is required for authentication. Okay, before we go ahead and run a bundle, we actually, well, yeah, we can go ahead and run a bundle right now. We are going to then go ahead and create our initial database. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. A bundle exec Rails DB create. And that will go ahead and create our initial databases that we need for our project. And this step has to be done before we move on to the next step of setting up the backend for authentication. Because if you skip this step, you'll hit errors after errors after errors. I experienced that during a lecture once because all I did was I forgot this step here. So make sure you don't forget this step for this next part that we would need to do. So after you go ahead and create your database, the next thing that we need to do to configure our application is to have Devise create the user's model as well as the controller. Both of the models and the migrations we can see, but the controller is more on the library. That's something that we can't be able to access without looking inside of their documentation. So that's something to know, is that it does handle the models as well as the user model if you are doing user, as well as the controller for it as well. So we don't really need to worry about that, as well as his routes. So we also don't need to worry about the routes inside of the backend. So the backend of it should be done pretty well after this step. After what we do with bundle exec, we'll do a Rails G. and it would be device underscore token underscore auth :install, and then the name of the model you want authenticated. So in most cases, it will be called user. The reason being is that that is the model name of the object that is logged in. So that would be the user's object that is logged in. If yours is called admin or customer or whatever it is, you would change that here. But in most cases, and as actually in all of the cases that we worked with, you can actually just still call it users, and all of those other roles, you can add that in as a attribute that you have here. So that's what we'll be calling our model, is the users model. And it will go ahead and be part of the API auth path. So that will mean that inside of our routes, it will go ahead and do /API/auth, so it knows that that route goes to the authentication. So that is what we'll be doing for this next step here, is the install of device token auth on a model that we specify, and we are namespacing it so we know that it is for our authentication. So with that, that creates for us a few things. The first thing that it creates is the initializer. That one's more for configurations. We don't need to worry about that. Well, it will go ahead and also do something inside of our application controller. And that will go ahead and make sure that you are logged in before you do anything within the controllers that you have. Oh. And then here we can go ahead and check the routes. That's something else that it touched. And with the routes, it will go ahead and it will create routes for us. And this is the line that does that. It's a little bit different than what we're used to, but that's how it did it. This one will make sure that the controller is done as well when we did the controller. And then the other thing it did is the migration file. So let's take a look at that migration file. So db migrate. And this is what it comes with the user. So with this, it comes with the UID, provider, and then stuff for each of the features that you can have with device. So database authenticable, that will go ahead and give you a encrypted password. So that would be good. Recoverable, memorable, confirmable, lockable, and all the other stuff. It also has name, nickname, image, and email for you to also use as well. So these are all stuff that you have for the user's object. It's name, your nickname, image, email, as well as a encrypted password. So you don't really need to add in anything else unless you want to add anything else like age or the address to the user's model. So that is what that will look like. We'll go ahead and migrate in a sec. I also want to show you the model. And this is the model of how that will look like. And then we can go ahead and add in more features of device. So for example, if you do want your information to be lockable, it will just be a comma and then lockable like this. And that will be enable lockable. And then you might need to comment out stuff here inside of the migration. So that will go ahead and kind of give you the ability to lock your account during a certain amount of time. So that is the models, but we actually won't need to add in anything here. Those are just optional ones. The main ones that we do need are these 5 ones here of the being able to authenticate your database. So making sure that it rates our validations for us, making sure that we're able to register, recover, and then remember. And then that is more for validations as well. So that is the user's model. So this is mostly stuff coming in from the user's device here. Okay, we actually need to do one more thing, and that is to run this migration before we migrate. So that way it will be able to work when we are going to be doing some stuff with our backend. So what we would need to do is to do a bundle exec rails g migration to generate a migration. And what the migration will be called is to be able to do an add trackable to users. So that will go ahead and add trackable to users, but that will give you an empty migration file. We actually need to fill it out with what it is that we are copying. Let me see what this is doing. Getting an error. Oh, yeah. Inside of the user's model, I need to go ahead and add in this line of code. before we move on, because this gives us an error. So let's go ahead and do this here inside of the users model. And this will go ahead and extend device within our model. So that way it knows that this model is doing it from device. So here is your users model. We just need to add that line on line 4, and that should be good. So then let's rerun that last command actually. And I'm hoping that will solve our issue, and it does. So yeah, go ahead and rerun this command again. And that should work now. After that, inside of this migration file that we created inside of here, this will go ahead and have this code here from the documentation, and we can just copy and paste this actually. So go ahead and have this. I'll Slack this out in a sec. And that is what we'll be putting inside of the migration file. So make sure it's the one that says add trackable to user. And inside of the change, this is what this file would look like so. So make sure that that is the case. Inside of this, we can actually save this because this is something that won't ever change inside of our different projects. So this is something that you can copy and paste over, and I'll show you a way that we can save it so you can access it later. We're actually going to talk a little bit about GitHub's different feature, which is called Jest. So how you get to Jest is that if you go ahead and press on this plus button on the top right-hand corner, there'll be something called a new Jest. Essentially what Jests are is that it will go ahead and save certain code snippets that you have. So this is really good for saving something like this, because this is something that we might need to do in a lot of our projects. So we can go ahead and copy and paste that here, give it a file name, which is add trackable to user, and then a description if you want to of what it is of the migration to add is this here. And then that will go ahead and give you the ability to create this as a Jest. So then you can go ahead and do a public Jest or a private Jest. And then that will go ahead and once you press on the green button, it will save that to your GitHub account. So then instead of looking through your projects or looking through the project notes and all that, you can just go through your Jests. And again, you can get to it with this plus sign, or you can go to your Jests here. And that will show you all the ones that you have. And then you can just copy this over to your next project. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing for some of these, because a lot of these things we might need to do over and over again, but it's the exact same code. So something like this, you're able to copy and paste it from the Jest over to your project. So plus sign your Jest or new Jest, and then you can copy and paste that here, give it some information here. Okay, so going back to this, after that, we are now ready for our migration. And then we just need one more thing, and then we'll be good with the backend. So let's go ahead and run this migration real quick of bundle exec rails db migrate. And that will go ahead and migrate our user for our database as well as the migration file that we just did. So that should be good. So now one more thing that we need to do, that one is because that it doesn't really play well with the newest version of Rails. So inside of the config folder application.rb, so let me show you where that is again. So inside of the config folder and then application.rb, after this config API only line, we need to add in these two lines as well, just so that it will work inside of this newer React or newer Rails version that we're working with. So that will go ahead and keep the sessions and everything working like normal. So here's our application.rb, and that's all the configurations that we need to do for the backend for it to work, is that we just need to follow those steps. And again, these steps are going to be inside of your lecture notes, which I will release afterwards. So let's go ahead and push this up to GitHub. We'll go ahead and create our front end, and then we need to get our front end working with authentication. That will be the next step. Now everything is done for the back end. All of the models is done from the device. All of the controller is done with the device as well as routes. So everything in the back end for the user is done for our project, and it's all handled through a device. So let's go ahead and add in everything that we have written so far. And then what we are going to be doing after that is going to commit what we did so far of device backend done. Yeah, that's what we have here. And then I need to actually go back to GitHub. So you can just click on back to GitHub here to go back if you're at Gist. And I need to create a new repository. So let's create a new repository. Let me see what this Copilot thing is. Get suggestions for lines of code and entire function in real time. Interesting. I might check that out later. Wonder what that would do here. So let's do a new repository. This one will be ROR. I called it Auth app, I think. Yeah, Auth. Auth. And then summer. I don't know why I did summer 21. The year's 22. So yeah, that's what I'll have here. So that's what this will be called. Create repository. And then here, let's grab it, the SSH. Yep, it is the SSH. And then we are going to be running this next command of get remote add origin, and then make sure you paste your SSH. And lastly, what we are going to be doing is to do get push origin main, and that part is good to go. Okay, so the next part is to set up, so those are all the steps that you need for the backend. Again, all the notes are inside of Slack as well as inside of Neo if you need to reference that. So the next part is to get this up and running on the front end. So that's what we'll be doing next. So to do that, we are going to do a yarn create, or no, not yarn. We'll do an npx here, and we are going to create our front end, call it client. So the npx create React app, and then we'll call it client like so. And that might take a sec. We'll go ahead and just do the initial steps of what we will be doing. And then after the break, we'll go ahead and do what we need to for the auth to work inside of the front end. Okay, so what I am going to do next is to add the proxy before I forget. So let's do that. Sometimes I do forget, and it's fine. Just make sure you do this, or else it won't know how to communicate from front end to back end. So inside of your client folder, your package.json, we are going to go ahead and add in this line of code of the proxy. So that will be right above the scripts. And that would be our proxy, and then our localhost 3001, because that's where we'll be running our backend server. So this is what it will look like. And again, it will be right above the script tag here of the proxy. Okay. Inside of the client folder, we need to go ahead and go into that. So I'm going to do a Command-Shift-D as in dog, and make sure that both of these are inside of the same directory. So again, it will be Command-Shift-D, and that will go ahead and it will give you two panels. And the first thing you should check is if they are CD. If they're not CD'd in the same directory, have them CD in both of the same directory. Then afterwards, one of the panels of which one you want for the client, that one is going to be CD into the client folder. So this one is within one of them, it would be inside of the client folder. So what we are going to do is that we are going to add in our front end packages. So this is what you would need to do for your front end packages here. So we are going to go ahead and add in the main ones like Axios and React Router DOM. And if you are going to be styling, you would need to have the style components as well as your style library. So for example, if we're using React Bootstrap, and then that would also require Bootstrap as well. And those are going to be the main ones that you'll be using. One more that we'll add on into this list is going to be what we would need for the front end for our authentication to work. And what that is going to be called devise Axios. And now let me double check if this is an underscore or a dash real quick. I'm just going to look inside of the lecture notes. Yeah, it will be a dash, not an underscore. So yeah, we would also need devise Axios for our authentication to be working on the front end. So those are all going to be the packages that you might need. And if you are dealing with time, you might need React Moments and Moment. And that's if you are dealing with some sort of a time or a date. So those are the two packages that you may need as well if you are dealing with a time or a date there. But in our case, I'll just add them anyways. It's okay to add them, but these are usually what you would have inside of the projects that we'll be working on for this class. So with some of these packages, some of them will work right out of the box. Other ones, we need to go ahead and we need to configure them so it will work. And that would just be some initial setup steps that we need to do. So we'll do that real quick as well. So then what we are going to do is inside of your client source folder, we would need to go to the index.js and we need to import a few things for this to work. The first thing that we are going to be importing is browser router. And that will go ahead and allow us to have some front end navigation. That one is from React Router DOM. And then we are going to wrap our whole entire app inside of the browser router here. The other one is for styling. That one is whatever your style library is. We will need to import the testing, or not the testing, the style framework. So let me double check that with React Bootstrap real quick of what that line of code is. And we'll just bring that over. So yeah, this code right here. So that is how you import the styles. And then one more thing for the authentication is going to be called our middleware, Ignite middleware. And I'll explain what this does a little bit later, but we also need this be configured as well at the beginning. And then how this would work is that we'll just call it like a function. So this would be your index.js. And then we just added some stuff to get our packages up and running. And again, we'll come back to the init middleware, what that actually does, because it does come a little bit later on. So yeah, after that, we are actually going to be creating some folders. And then when we come back from break, we'll be filling out some of those folders with some components and authentication stuff that we'll be working with. So inside of here, to make sure that it works, I'll do inside of the client And then I am going to slack out each of the commands. So that way it will all be the same here. Because sometimes when you click it here and do new folder, you might do it in the wrong place. So to make sure that everyone's doing it, we'll do it inside of the terminal. So the first one is going to be the source folder, and we are going to be creating a folder called components. So that will be the first one, it's the components folder. The other one that we are going to be doing after that one is inside of there, we are going to go ahead and create 2 more folders, one for our auth and one more for our shared. And that will go ahead and create those 2 folders inside of the components folder. The final folder that we are going to be creating is going to be inside of the source folder, and it would be the providers folder, because we're actually going to be using the context API that we learned from last week and implementing that inside of a global scale so we can have users throughout our whole application. So that's what we'll be doing, is using the providers. Okay, so that's where we are going to leave off for now. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll come back at 7:15. Oh, I don't have my timer here. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and build out some more of our components, and then we'll work on authentication. Okay, welcome back from break. Before break, we are just following the steps to go ahead and to work with what we need to do for device for the back end. Now we are going to do everything that we need to for the front end. So far we just added our folders and our components and everything like that. So the next part is to kind of get it up and running, and then we'll do more of the authentication side of what we need. So let's actually go ahead and let's just create some initial pages for us to work with. And then after that, we can go into the components we need for our authentication for it to work. So let's start off in our app.js. This will define all of the pages that we are going to be using. And initially, we'll go ahead and create our app. And we are going to have everything inside of a fragment. And then we need to import a few things. First thing that we need to import are routes and route. This is from React Router DOM. And this is what will define our pages, is our routes and routes here. So the first one will be routes, and our other one will be route singular. And then this will require 2 things. The first one will need to have the path. The other one is what element goes to that path. And the element will be a component of what it is going to show when it gets to that page. So yeah, this one we'll have for the home. And it will be self-closing like this. So I'm actually going to import home from ./component/shared/home, just to keep it simple. And not only that, I'll also have another one called no match. That one will be whatever other route that we have that would be going to this 404 page that we have. So that's what we'll have as well. And I'm actually going to copy and paste this, but this one will be called no match instead of home, like so. So that's what we'll have for now, just to get things up and running. And then we'll add in more pages as we go on by. So here is the app.js. And then inside of the shared folder, we just need to create those components real quick. And I'm just got to keep it simple, nothing too fancy. We don't have a wireframe to worry about quite yet. So we'll just do home.js. And all the home.js is that it will just be home. And then this one will just have like an H1 that says home page. Sure, that works. And then it will be export default home. So yeah, just to keep it simple. Okie dokie. The other one that we need to do is our no match. So let's do that one real quick. And that is the page that it will hit if we don't have a route for it, and it's trying to get to that route. So that is the next one here. So I actually need to import link from React Router DOM, because we want to navigate back to the home page if they do end up on this page here. So then how that will look like is that it will be no match. And with this, we are going to go ahead and say H144 page not found. And then we'll go ahead and link them to the right page to return home. And this will go to this, the root page. And we'll export default, the component of no match. So we need those to go ahead and get our app.js working. And that will go ahead and define the initial pages that we have. I don't know why that's formatted weird. Let me redo that then. There we go. Sweet. So that is just to get us started with those initial pages. So the next thing that we need to do is to now focus on the auth. So what we would need to do next is that since we are going to have the user be logged in, we want them to have the user be logged in throughout our whole entire app. So if we want to do that, that would mean that we need to do it in a global space. And with that global space that we are going to do it in is going to be needing the context API. And again, what the context API is that it allows us to utilize functions and utilize storage in a global scale. So it really doesn't matter where we are inside of the project. We can go ahead and access that information as long as we write it out a certain way. So that's what we are doing here with the auth, is that we are going to have one for the auth, and we'll call it auth provider. And your auth provider will look pretty similar throughout all of the projects. So what I am going to need is I need a few things. First thing is going to be React. The other one is use state. And this is coming from React itself. The other one that I need is going to be Axios, because we are going to be communicating to the backend. That one is coming from Axios. And then the last one that we might need is going to be the use navigate. That will go ahead and be from React Router DOM. And that's how we are going to navigate after we are logged in. We will go to another page because it should take us to another navigational spot once we are logged in. So the first thing that we are going to be needing is to create the initial context. And again, the pattern that we are going to follow is the model name, which in this case is called auth. Call it context. So auth context equal to react.create context. And that's will create the initial context there. The other one that we would need after that is the consumer, and that will give us access to anything that we store within the provider. So that would be consumer, auth consumer. That would be from our auth context.consumer. And then after that, we need to go ahead and create our auth context of our provider. And with our provider, we are going to require it to have props of children. And inside of here, we need to go ahead and create the initial context of the return of the auth context.provider. And that will go ahead and have children here for the props. And then the value is what we have access to from the consumer. And that will require two curly braces because we're returning the value within a hash here. And next thing that we need is to do an export default of auth provider. And that will go ahead and create the context, consumer, and provider for us, is this pattern here. Go ahead, Anna.
I said the children is the building word, right? I see multiple examples, all use children.
Yeah, that's what we're using here.
Thank you.
So what we are going to do here is what do we want store within this provider? Inside of here, we are going to store the user object. So we'll go ahead and have user and set user here, and we are going to store it within a use state. Initially, what we want is to have null. The reason being is that when you initially land on the app, that means that you're not logged in yet. It's not until you go ahead and fill out the form and then you hit the submit button, that's when you are logged in. So initially when you land, you shouldn't be logged in at all. That's what this means here. So that is like if you're going to a bank, it shouldn't give you your information yet. It should wait until you verify your information until you are able to access that. Or else you go to a bank and then they'll give you information regardless of if you're the right user or not. Next one that we are going to do is that we are going to go ahead and create our functions for each of our authentication paths. And let me kind of show you that by running our server. And it's also a good idea because we will be running both of our servers to hook on into a power source because it does drain your battery a lot. So let me go ahead and launch my server here, and I'll go ahead and also plug in as well. And I would recommend you to do the same because it does drain some battery. I also feel like since it's during the summer and the summer is hotter, it also makes your battery drain a little bit more because it is running the fan to keep your computer cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and start up both of our servers. And what we are going to do next is that we are actually going to look up the routes for our individual paths that we need to do to have our user authenticated. So then what we are going to have is our localhost 3000. And then right now it shows the home page, which is fine. And the other one is localhost 3001/rails/info/routes. So that's the one that we are going to be needing after you start in both of your servers like so. So here, let me kind of zoom in a bit so you can see this. More, there we go. Okay, so up until this point right here, everything that is highlighted, this is from device. And this is all of the paths that you have inside of your routes. So that single line of code that we have inside of your config routes here, this line of code actually created all of these routes for us, which is awesome. Some of them we'll be using, others, and most of them we won't be using. So I'll kind of point out which ones we are going to be using here. So for our register, we're actually going to be doing this one right here of creating a register user. So that will go ahead and allow us to create a user with this particular path. So that's what we are following along here. The other one that we are going to be doing is these two right here. One for logging in, which is called sign in, which that will create a new session. The other one is to destroy the session. That is how we sign out. So those are the three main things that we need to get authentication working. It's for them to register, log in, and then log out. Everything else is not required. Those are all going to be optional, like updating your password and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and work through some of this and get those main features up and running to get it working for our front end as well. So let's just do the handle register first. And this one will require a user when you go ahead and register. And this will need an Axios call. And to do that one will be this one right here. that will be a post request slash API slash auth. So that's what we need. So it'll be a post request slash API slash auth. And then we also need to pass in the user as well. And then what the results that we are getting back, what we are going to do with that is that the first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to store that within our state. So that'll be res.data.data. The reason why it's .data.data is because inside of device, it returns it into two different objects, and we have to go down 2 levels to get to that data. So that's why we are doing .data.data because of device, of how it does it in the back end there. The other thing that I am going to do is to navigate to another page. So this will require me to create a variable, call it navigate equals to use navigate. And that will give us access to this navigate. And then we can go ahead and navigate to wherever it is that we need to. So after I log in and register, it should take me back to the home page. So that's what this will do here. So let's go ahead, and if you want them to use this, you can have them use the user and then handle register. So if you don't put in here, then the consumer won't know what to grab. So now if I put it here, it will know to grab the user and the handle register here. The next thing that we are going to do is our login. That one will also require a user as well. And with this will also be Axios call. And let's see what it is after that Axios call. So it is create. So it is post. And then it is /API/auth/sign_in. So that would be the path here. So it'll be post /API/auth/sign_in. And then we also need to pass in the user as well. I also need a const here of res, and then we'll console log res, but then later on, I'll show you how to actually error handle. So that's why we are writing it like this for now, but after that, that should be good. But then we can copy both of these down here because we're going to do the exact same thing when we log in. But yeah, we'll come back to this area so we can go ahead and have some Flash messages working. But for now, let's just mainly focus on auth. So then with that, that will handle the login. So then we can put the login here for the consumer to reach. And then the last one that we need to here would be called the handle log out. That one will require nothing to be passed in, and that would be an Axios, and it would be a destroy, and it'll be delete. It'll be /API/auth and then sign out. Oh, delete, and it would be /API/auth/sign_out. Let me double check that. Yep, that's what it is. And then we'll do our promise handling like so. And what we are going to do is to set the user back to null. So that means that they're no longer logged in. And then let's just navigate to the same place. And then again, we'll come back to the error handling here. So and let's also do a handle logout. Something else that I will add on in addition to this is just going to be some simple functions that this will help me out with some of my nav bar as well as my other stuff. And what they are is that the first one is whether or not that I am authenticated. And that will either check if the user is null or not. So that will be a Boolean value. And if it's true, it'll mean that the user is logged in. If it's false, that means that the user is not logged in. So that's what this variable will help us out with that we can grab from the provider. The other one is to be able to set the user. So that one will go ahead and be an anonymous function of the user being passed in, and then we'll set the user to that user being passed in. So that will allow us to change user wherever we need to, if we are changing it somewhere. And those are all the functions. And again, it'll be the exact same thing. Maybe you'll have them located somewhere else after they log in or register, but this is typically how your auth provider will look like. So let me go ahead and select this out. And there is one more step for this to work, and that is inside of our index.js. Oh man, it did it again. Let me re-select this out. It didn't format it correctly. I don't know what's going on. Oh, it did it again. There we go. That's the better format. Okay, but yeah, so this is how your auth provider will look like. One more thing that we need to do is inside of our index.js, we need to import all of our providers. So this will be called auth provider. This is coming from /provider/auth providers. So this is what it would need to be, and it should wrap the app.js. So that's how we can get it to a global space, is by to put it inside of our index.js. What is going on? I feel like it's not copying and pasting correctly. There we go. So then the next part that we need to do is to go ahead and to get these functions up and running. So that will require us to go ahead and create pages for them to log in, pages to them for register, and a nav bar that will allow them to go ahead and log out as well. So that's what we'll be doing next, is those are the necessary items that we need from there. So what I'm going to do, let's see here. This will be broken for a bit because we don't have the other pages working. So let me think. Yeah, let's do the nav bar first, and then it will then be the login page and then the register page. So that's what we'll have. So let's go ahead and create the nav bar next from ./component/shared/navbar. And we won't have that quite yet, so we'll just type it in for now. And then we'll put the navbar right on top of all of our pages here. So that's where the navbar goes. The footer will go under the last one there. So here is our app.js now. And then let's go ahead and create our nav bar. And then inside of our nav bar, we need to go ahead and grab the user's information, because depending on whether or not the user is logged in, we're going to toggle some conditional logic. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because when they are logged in, it should show a logout feature. If they're not logged in, then it should show them to register or log in. So first thing I need is that, because this is a nav bar, I need some length so we can navigate between our application. This is from React Router DOM. The other one is that I need some information from my provider. And anytime that you need anything from your provider, you have to make sure that it is defined as well as it is inside of the value. Then you need to bring it in from the consumer. So that's how you get access to stuff in the provider. So in this case, it is the auth consumer from this file here. Then afterwards, we are going to go ahead and create the navbar. And with this navbar, we are then going to go ahead and have all of our stuff within here. And then what we are going to do is that after that, we are then going to return an empty set of fragments for now, and then we'll do some conditional logic there. So with the conditional logic, we are going to, let's see, we need to have a few functions, but before we forget, let's do an export default navbar. And because it is a curly brace return, I can't really import my consumer in a correct way by wrapping everything. So what I need to do is that I need to go ahead and create another variable, call it connected navbar. And that will go ahead and connect the navbar to my consumer because of the way that this is a curly brace return. So that will require me to have props. And then within here, I will go ahead and bring in the consumer. And then within the consumer, I'll have the value here. And the value is going to go ahead and render out the navbar. And with my navbar here, this will go ahead and pass in all of the props that were already there, plus the value that is coming from the consumer that is giving access to the provider. So let's have that be exported defaulted. So this is any props that are being passed through from one component to another. And this will go ahead and pass in this information here to this component via props. So then from there, I can go ahead and grab whatever information I want. The main one I really want is the user and the handle logout feature. So that way I can log out. So that's what I'll need is the user and the handle log out. Let me see if I capitalize it. Yeah, I did. So yeah, handle log out. Make sure it's spelled correctly with capitalization and everything as well. So then afterwards, we are going to go ahead and build out our navbar. But again, we're going to build it slightly different because of the conditional rendering of whether or not we are showing the button if we are going to log out or not. So I'll show you what we are going to do with that. So first, let's just build out a navbar. And then the first link that we'll have is going to be our home page. So that will go to our home. So I'll just put a note here. So this will show, or I'm just going to say this will display regardless of if you're logged in or not. Regardless if you are logged in or not. So that will go ahead and it will display regardless. What we are going to do down here is that we are going to run a function called write nav items. Write nav items. And this will go ahead and it will do the conditional rendering of if the user's logged in, it'll show the logout button. If they're not logged in, then it'll show the login and register button. So that's what we'll have here. So then that will be a function called write nav items. And with this, we are going to go ahead and first off, I'll do if the user, I'll just say it will links to show up if the user is logged in. So to do that, that is if the user, which is this variable that we are having, if it is not null, then it will go ahead and we'll just return these links here. So what I want to return for sure for now is the logout button. And how that would work is that it would just be on click of a anonymous function that will do our handle logout. So that's what we'll do. Is that if there is a user, it will show them the logout button. Else, and then this is for links to show up when they are not logged in. That's what we'll return here. And these are going to be links that will be what will show up when they're not logged in. So this will go ahead and be, I have one link here. That will go to the login. Man, that's a good one. And then I'll have a li here for login. And this will go to /login. Yeah. And then this one, I'll do another one. I just copy and paste it. This one will be register. And that would be this register button here. So that is our nav bar. So these are the links that will show regardless of if you're logged in or not. This is the link that will show if you are logged in. And then this is the link that we have if you're not logged in. So we're just doing some conditional rendering based off of if the user is logged in or not. That's the condition. So let me go ahead and slack out this nav bar, and that should work for our navigation. Did it again. I don't know why he's doing this today. So then now if we refresh the page, it should give us some navigation, and that's correct. It does take us to the login and register, but we haven't defined that route yet. So that's why it didn't do those routes for us. So let's work on that next. It's going to be the login page and the register page. So then that would be inside of the auth folder. And the reason why I want to put it in the auth folder is that anything having to do with authentication, I'm going to put them inside of this folder. But that's just to keep things a little bit more organized. So that's where we'll be doing our login and our register is our these two ones right here. So to get this to show up inside of our app.js, we are going to have the login. This is going to be from our ./component/shared/login. And then we'll have another one for register. And then we need to create two more routes for that, one for the login, the other one for the register. And this one will be login and register like so. So that will create two more pages for those components. But it's not gonna work right now because we don't have login or register quite yet. So then inside of the auth, let's go ahead and create the login.js. And what this login.js is going to be a form. And with this, I'm not going to style it. I'm just going to leave it as is for now. And we are going to bring in the use state. And then because we are going to need the user's information as well as some functions, I need to bring in the consumer as well. Because again, anything I want from the provider, I need to do that via the consumer. So let's go ahead and bring in the login function first things first. And that would be good. And then what I am going to need after that is to go ahead and do the connected login. And this one is what will wrap my consumer with my value here of the login. And we also need some props here. And then we also need some of the values here. So that will go ahead and pass in the values and the props to the component. And it will be export default connected login. So that's what we'll have there. So then here I can pull in information that I have from the provider. The main thing that I have in my provider that I want to use is this login function, because that's the login form that I'm creating. So let's bring in our handle login from my provider, and then we can start to fill out our form. So this one will be a cons user here. and then set user. And then it will be a use state of a object of the email to be blank and the password to also be blank. And then what I am going to do after that is to do a handle submit. And when I am handling submit, I am for now going to do a prevent default. And then I am also going to do a handle login with the user and do a set user of the initial state to clear out the form. So then inside of here, I'll just have this H1 that says login here. And with this, I am going to have in the form. And then this one is going to be on submit of the handle submit function I have above. And then I'll have some label. This one is for email. And this one will be input, self-closing. And that would need a few things. The first one is going to be the three things that we always need. That would be name of the field is for email. The value of where it's stored. That one will be user.email and how we are storing it. On change, that would be our anonymous function passing in the event of setting the user of everything that was already there for the user, but we are then going to do the email of e.target.value. So those are the main things. The other one that is good to have is to do a type email. That will do a front-end validation to make sure that you have the email in the right format. So that's the type email here for this input. And then you can also have like a placeholder. We can have required as well. That would be good. So then let's do this one more time, but for password. And this one is also for password here, password here, password here. And there's actually a type of password. So when you type it in, it doesn't show your password. It only shows dots or stars or whatever it is. So that's the type password here for what we have. And then last thing that we need is a submit button. And that's what we will have here to submit for the login form. So that is good. Again, it's just a regular form that we have. And the register form is going to be very similar, but I just need to tweak it a bit. So we can actually copy and paste majority of the stuff over for the register, but we need to change it a little bit so it knows that it is for the register. So let me paste that here as well of the login form. And then I am going to paste it here in the register, but then change a few things to be register. So this will be register. This would be register. This will also be register. And this will be register. And we're actually going to handle register here as well. So everything else that says login will change to register. That is good there. This will also say register here. And then when we submit, it'll do a handle register. The other thing that we are going to be doing is to do a password confirmation. So that's the only additional field that we need. The reason being is that when they type in their password, they should confirm it to make sure that they know what is that they are typing. And that will be an empty string. So that's the other field that we have for this particular form is the password confirmation. So let's just do this one here of password confirmation here, here, and here. That will still be type of password. And then this one would just say confirmation like so. So that's what we'll have here. And then something else is that we are actually going to do some front-end validations. So the front-end validation that we are going to do is that if user.password is equal to the user.password confirmation, those two fields are the same, then we'll go ahead and register. Yeah. Else we are going to throw in a alert. So we are going to alert saying password does not match. So I'll show you that feature as well. So this is, again, some front-end validations, making sure that those two fields, so the password and the password confirmation, is going to match. So that way it will go ahead and it will register them. And that's all we need so far. So let's go ahead and check what we have here. Component share not found. Let me see if I did everything correctly here. Oh, why is it shared? It should be called auth. I think I copy and pasted that down. So yeah, here's the app.js. See if there are any more errors. Okay. So yeah, let me re-slack out the app.js. It should say auth here, not shared. So that should work. Let's go ahead and register a new user because we can't log in because we don't have a user yet. Right now, you can see all of the nav bar items because we're not logged in. So if we're not logged in, it will show the home, which is this component here of the home. And it also shows the login and register because it will show up if we are not logged in. And that's what it's doing. So for the register, just do dummy data. Don't actually put in your email because we're actually not going to use this in an actual environment quite yet. So again, when you are testing out your stuff, don't put your actual email. Just do like test@test.com, and that's good. You don't need to be super specific with anything. And then the password would actually be the password of your information that you need for what you would register with. Just to keep it simple, the validation that it requires you to have is that it needs to have at least 8 characters long. So make sure that you have 8 characters long here. So just keep it simple. I always do password, and that would be what the password is. So just do password here for both of them. So type in the word password, and that's what the password is. It's easy to remember. It also passes the validation. So that's what we'll have here. So let me do it without matching it so you can kind of see that error. So this will happen if you don't have the password matching. But if we go ahead and have the password matching, and if I hit submit here, that will log you in. And you can click exit on all of them. And this will now be where it takes you, which is the home page. And then the navbar changes. So the navbar changes to where it is that we are going to show up if we are logged in, which is this one right here. So now that is how we log in. To log out, we can just press this button here. And that will log us out, take us back out here. And then we can now log in with that registered user. So then it will be test@test.com and then password like so. And that works. So authentication is all working so far. But if I go ahead and refresh my page, or if I go ahead and make an Axios call or anything else, it will actually kick me out. It will actually log out my user. So that's something that we need to fix when we come back from break, is that we would need to go ahead and do a certain thing to keep our user logged in, regardless of if we refresh or make some Axios calls that we are doing. So that is the change there. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll come back at 8:15. And then when we come back, we'll try to fix that error and kind of talk about what's going on of why it's not keeping the user logged in for when we refresh.
I have a quick question. Sorry.
Yep.
Let me go to the.
Okay. So going back to our application, anytime that we are logged in or register, it works and everything with log in, register, and log out. But then if we go ahead and refresh, it actually kicks our user out. And that's something that we don't want. And the reason why it's doing this is that the user isn't being saved. And then sometimes it does expire with the tokens. So we would need to manually change the tokens. And we had to do that all the time. That could get a daunting task. So something to help us is with the device Axios. So this will go ahead and help us out to do our middleware, which will then go ahead and switch out of those tokens when it needs to. We just need to add in this code next of what we need to do for that. And that will go ahead and solve that issue. So this one is going to be a copy and paste one. And then I'll show you what it will kind of do. But yeah, this one is what will work to keep our users logged in. So what we are going to call it is going to call it fetch user. And this will go ahead and it will keep the user logged in as long as we are, as long as the user is continue to log in without logging out. So let me slack this in here, and that's all we need to do to have this component working. So here is this code here, as well as the file name. And then I actually tried to convert this to the newer syntax. It actually doesn't work the same way it does because the use effect and the component did mount works a little bit differently than what it should be. So that's why we just leave it as is for now. But again, this will help our user to continue to stay logged in. The other thing that we need to do is that we need to import that fetch user from ./component/auth/fetch user. And we need to wrap our whole entire application of the main pages with that fetch user. So that will go ahead and make sure that the user is logged in and continue to log in until they log out. So that's what we'll have here. So we'll wrap that all within the routes. And then the last step is something that we already did. And that is the step that inside of our index.js, we need to go ahead and add in that one line of code to go ahead and do it automatically for us as well. So we already have that line. So we already did that. So that's the other thing that we need is this one and this one too. So now that we have that fetch user, now that if we log in, and let's go ahead and do our tests at test.com and type in our password. Now that if I refresh my page, and I'll just do this, it will go ahead and keep my users logged in. And it will also, if I go to other pages and everything like that and do Axios calls and stuff, it'll still continue that right here as well. So that's what you need to do. So make sure that it is the one with class. Because inside of the lecture notes, I explained how this one uses the older syntax, and this one is the one that's working. The newer syntax works, but then you would have to change a lot later on inside of the backend, especially if you have another level down. So this is the one that you are using, which is the class one. Don't use the one inside on the other one because that one is just mainly for notes. So that is how we do our login and our register as well as our log out. So all of our stuff in the front end is working. One thing I do want to add, and this will make more sense tomorrow, is to add in a protected route. What a protected route is that you are able to access this route as long as you're logged in. So that means that if I want to go and create a page where it shows all my bank account information, I want to make sure that they are going to be logged in order to access that page. So that's what a protected route is that it is only protected for those that will go ahead and be able to be logged in. So that one will also be another copy and paste one inside of the auth. And definitely the ones that we are copy and pasting, you can for sure put that inside of a jest. So that way you can refer to the jest instead of the lecture note here. So then this is what we are going to paste to it, and that will go ahead and handle that logic of if we are logged in, then it will go ahead and take us to the route that we want. If we're not logged in, then it will go ahead and it will take us to the login page. So then how we are going to use this tomorrow is that we are going to import the protected route. From /component/auth/protected route. And then inside of here, this will be a opening and closing protected route. I don't know what it's doing. I just want to copy this over here. Okay. And then this will be an opening and closing tag here of the route. And then whatever I put in here, that would be our protected route. So later on, I might have a route here, path here of like cats or whatever, or the about or whatever. That would go ahead and it will only be able to access this route if I'm logged in. This one will be our cat element, but we won't have that yet, so I'm just gonna comment that out. So we'll have that more tomorrow. So yeah, so that's the protected route. We'll be doing more of that tomorrow here. So yeah, so that is it for the authentication for the front end. So again, most of it is just going to be following this video and this lecture, and that is what you are going to be doing there. I do want to cover a few more things. Is the next thing that we are going to cover is what it will look like if you need to add in additional fields that aren't the email and password. So I'll go over that as well. And then the other one is going to be talking about Flash messages, and that will help us out with our messaging here too. But first, let's go ahead and stop the server, and let's go ahead and push this up to GitHub because it is a working app that we have here with authentication. And then we'll do git commit -m of auth done. So then if you need to do authentication, now you know that you need to do backend and front end validation, and it has to go to this point for it to be finished. And then we'll do git push origin main. Okay, I'm actually going to stop both servers currently, just for now. So what I want to talk about next is that when you go ahead and register, you're only able to register with your email and password. But if you go ahead and check inside of your database here, and we'll take a look at that. Let me close all of the folders and files here. Inside of your DB schema, you can see that the user not only has the email and password, but also has name, nickname, image, and all that as well. So if you need to use that, you would need to follow these steps, as well as if you need to add in additional fields, like let's say I want first name and last name, this is what you would need to do. So if it's already here, you can skip this step, but if it's not here, like let's say you need to add in something else like the age or the first name, last name, we need to run a migration. So that's what we are going to do. So inside of your main directory, because this is going to be a Rails command, we are going to do a bundle exec Rails G migration. And again, what migration is that it is just a value that you are able to do sets of instructions to apply to a database. So we're going to create some sets of instructions here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a add first and last name to users, plural. And then first name here. I'm just going to call it first, and then I'll do last name here. I'm just going to call it last. And then that should be good to create the migration. And before I migrate, I need to double check that file to make sure that it's going to the right place and doing the right thing. So that will go into the migration file. And yep, first name is a string, last name is also a string. So that looks good. And it's adding it to the users model or users table. So that looked good. Okay, and then next thing that we are going to do is to do a bundle exec Rails DB migrate. And that will go ahead and migrate it into the database. So what we are going to do next is that we need to add in those fields in the controller. But again, device takes care of our controller, but then it doesn't display our controller at all. So inside of our application controller, that's the only access that we have to the device controller here. So again, our controller is done with the user, but it's just hidden from us because device handles it inside of our package that we have. So one thing that we are guaranteed is that all of our controllers all inherit from the application controller. So this is where I'm going to write this logic here. And I don't know why the spaces here are 8, should be 2. There we go. So yeah, there we go. So then what I am going to do here is that I'm actually going to write in my before action. And I'm going to call it configure, like so. And what I'm going to configure is called permitted parameters. And this should sound familiar. But this is essentially what we are going to be doing here. And I only want to run this if it is a device controller. And this is a logic that to check if it is a device controller or not. So then I want it to be inside of protected. The difference between protected and private is that private is only private within that certain class. So only that class can use it. Protected will work on the class as well as all of its children. So that's what I want here is that I want it to work on all of its children here. And essentially what this is doing is that, as you remember, in all of our controllers, they have a model name params, right? A private params here. So for example, inside of the user's controller, even though that's hidden, there is going to be a place that's called user params. And essentially right now, what it will look like is that it'll be params dot require, and then they call it user, and then it is going to permit the email and the password. That's the only thing that it has in that written hidden controller that it has here. What we are going to do is that because we add in 2 more fields of the first and last name, which is this right here, and if you want to use like the image or nickname or something, you would need to do this as well. So then if you need to do that, essentially we need to go ahead and put in the parameters as well as first and last as well. That's essentially what we are doing inside of this method, is that we're just injecting it inside of the user's params here. So to do that, you have to do it in a different way. So this is based off the documentation, and it is called device parameters sanitizer dot permit, and it is for sign up. So we are doing it for the sign up, and the keys are going to be the fields that we are adding in addition to the email and password. So that will just be an array of keys that we have. So that one will be the first name, last name, and then if you want to use image, let's just also use image as well. So that's what we are permitting. If we didn't have this, if we go ahead and submit our form with the first name, last name, and image, it will not be permitted at all. So it won't even reach the backend. It won't be permitted. So this will go ahead and permit it in the device controller. So here is the code, and we have to do in the application controller, because again, everything in the device controller is a little bit hidden. So this will go ahead and run it if it is a device controller. Then the other thing that we need to do is going to be in our front end. So that will be inside of our client source, and then it will be inside of our components Auth register. We are going to go ahead and add in those fields here. So not only do we have email, password, and password confirmation, we'll also have first name, which is a string, last name, another string, and then image. So again, this could be whatever that you want to store for the user. It could be their age, their other information, address, and everything else. You would also need to put that here. So let's go ahead and add that here as well as here when we are resetting the state. And then we just need to add in those new fields. So I'm actually going to do that right after the email. I'll do 3 more of these. This one is for the first name. This one will be for first, user.first and first. This one will be no type at all. So it will just be the default type of text. This one will be last name. This one will be last and last here. And I can remove this. And this one will be image. So this one, I'll just say profile image. So this one will be image, 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 and image here. So, oh, actually there is no type image. So never mind, I'll just remove that as well. So that's what you need to do, is that you'll add in those additional fields inside of the form for it to also take in those values of first name, last name, and image. So I'll show you this to show you that it works. And then we'll move on to Flash messages. So I'm going to log out. Oh, actually, just kidding. I'm going to start my servers. That's what I'm going to do. And bundle exec rails s-p 3001. There we go. You need both your servers running. Let's go ahead and register a whole new user. And now it has more fields for us to use. So then the email would be test2@email.com. This be test 2, and then testing 2. Sure. Let me grab an image from Unsplash. Let's see. Oh, these are cool. Let's grab this for the profile image, copy image address. That is the profile image. Password is password and password. Again, just use password. It's easy to remember, matches all the requirements, and that should be good. And that should register me. Oh, I think I have a typo. Yeah, I do mean that. I have a typo in my application controller. This right here. Oh yeah, there's no S in parameter. So let me re-stack out this application controller again. Just had a quick typo there. So let's try that again of test2@email.com. Yep, 2. And I'll call this testing. And then I think it was this image. And password and password. Why does this look longer? Password and password. Unknown key. Do I have another typo? I think I do. It's supposed to be keys, plural. Dang it. Okay. So this one should be updated now. So go ahead and grab that one. That one I edited, so that should work. So let's go ahead and do that all again. Test 2, testing. Sure. Password. Password. Finally, okay, that is going to create the user, but now we can grab more information from the user. So that will go ahead, and if you take a look in our auth provider inside of our state, now you can go ahead and grab their image, their first name and last name, and then their email as well. Notice how there you can grab the password, because again, the password is encrypted and that is a hidden field. So that is what we need to do if you add in additional fields. Going off of that password thing, if I go ahead and show you this real quick, I'll do this so you don't have to. This is just to prove a point of device, is that if we go ahead and go into the console and do user.all, that will show us all of the user, but notice how it doesn't show any of the user's password, right? So I can't just go user dot first dot password, right? It will give me a nil value. So the password is going to be hidden, but it recognizes and handles all that for us with device, which is awesome. Okay, so what we are going to do, let's start back up our server actually, is that the next topic is just going to be a super quick topic of how we are going to be handling things, is that we are going to be doing some Flash messages. So again, what Flash messages are is that they are going to be information for us to use to go ahead and alert the user of what it is that it is going to be needing. So we're really going to utilize Flash messages a lot, especially in error handling. So that's what we are going to be doing there. So how this is going to work is that we are actually going to do this a little bit more styled. So we are going to be using the React alerts here. So this is what it will look like for our Flash messages. So if it is informational, it'll be this. If it's green, that's good. If it's an error, that's bad. And that's typically what it is. So that's what we are going to be using just to style it up a bit so it can alert the user like so. So let's go ahead and use that. We're actually going to go ahead and create a whole nother component. But before then, let me go ahead and do our get flow real quick. So let's go ahead and do a get add. And get commit -m of added first, last name, and image to user. And it will be get push origin main. Okay, let's start back up this server here. And Flash messages are only going to be on the mostly on the front end. The back end, we might need to kind of clear up some of our messages, but most of the stuff that we'll be doing is going to be on our front end. So I'm going to create a whole new component inside of the share folder called Flash. And this is where we are going to define what the Flash message is. And we are going to have it be a little bit styled. So we'll go ahead and bring in the alert from React Bootstrap. And then we are going to do a use state as well to keep track of some of our information. If you're using a different style library, you might have to find the equivalent of a alert in that style library. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a flash right here. And that would look good. And then I am going to just do this for now. Yeah, and return. And then what I'm going to do here before I forget is to export default my flash. So that looks good there. So what I'm going to do is that I need to know what type of flash message this is. I'm going to call that variant. So that will be the variant of what kind of flash it is. That means that if it is a information, a success, or an error, those are going to be my main ones that I'll be working with. Is if it is an error or the type here, that's my flash message. After that, it will be the message itself of what the message will be saying. And then will be a function called set errors. What this function will do is that it will go ahead and allow me to change the errors from one error to another if I really do need that. So I need to pass in that information as well. So what I need to keep track of is that if I am showing the message or not, because I don't want to show this all always. I just want to show it sometimes, especially when we have some stuff. So what we are going to do is that by default, we'll have it be true for it to show. So then what we are going to do is I'm actually going to do this a little bit differently with the return, is that if it shows like so, then return the alert. And then if it doesn't, then we'll return null. So that's what we'll have here. What the alert will need is that it needs some variant, and that would be our variant here that we're passing in from props. Something else that it needs is that it needs a on close of how it is closing. I think we need an on close. Yeah, this little X button, that's what we have here. So that is how we are going to close it. So I'm just going to copy this one here. And then dismissible means that you can press X on it. I'm actually going to do this one of set show, as well as after that, we are going to do a set errors to null. So this function coming in, we are setting the errors to null. Inside of a alert header, alert.header, there's a heading. Let me double check. It's this one right here. So yeah, heading. This will say whatever you want the heading to say. So this will say I don't know what this should say. Message. And the actual message will be here. So this is the component that will display alert if there is any errors. So that's what we will have here. So let's go ahead and let me slack this out, and then I'll show you how to implement this. So it'll be an additional step with some of our logic that we already have. So then to get this up and running, what we are going to do is that we need to go ahead and inside of our provider, we need to go ahead and keep track of our error messages if there are any error messages. So this would be provider, auth provider. And what we are going to do is that let's just keep track of that in here. So it'll be cons, errors, and then we'll do set errors here. And by default, we'll just store nothing. So that's what we'll have for our flash message, is that initially we don't have any errors. But if we go ahead and do our catch, this instead of console logging, which we can still do, I guess, we're just going to have a errors here that will trigger a flash message. So then how this would work is that it would be a set errors of the variant to be a danger, which is going to be what the error is. And then the message is that it's going to be coming from the response coming back. So it'll be response spelled out .data.errors .full messages. That's how we get our errors, is this particular one here. And then that one will require the first item within that array. So that's what we need to do there, as well as inside of our other ones too. So let's go ahead and copy this and put it right here in our handle login. And then we don't need anything for the log out. So we can just leave it as is, because we guess we can just do this, I guess, if there are any errors. So yeah, we'll just do main E is the login and log out. Register and log out there. So then afterwards, let's go ahead and pass in the errors as well as the set errors function. So when we are doing our catch, that will go ahead and store that error inside of our state. So what we are storing is what kind of error it is. That's the danger one. And then how we are grabbing the message. And this is how we grabbed it here for this type of message. So then let's go into our other components, and let's make sure that this will work properly here and display it. So the first one that we'll do is register. So let's do that one first. So this one will be inside of auth and then register. So how this one will work is that inside of here, let's also bring in the errors as well as the set errors. That's what we'll have. And then what we are going to do with that is that further down, we'll probably do it right above the form. We're going to do some conditional logic. So if there are errors, then we are going to show the flash message, else we'll show nothing. With the flash message, let's go ahead and import that. So let's do import flash from /shared/flash there. There we go. And then inside of here, we are going to pass in the variant to be equal to errors.variant and then message, which equals to errors.message. And then we are going to then do set errors like so of that function of set errors. So that's what we need to do there. And then we also need to do that inside of the login as well. So we can just copy this over essentially. So let's go ahead and let me select this out for the register page.
What is the variant and MSG actually means?
The variant is what color it is. Danger is red. The message is what the error message is. So that is that you forgot to type in your email or your passwords don't match. That's what the message is what error that it has.
Okay, thank you.
So let's go ahead and do that again, but inside of login. So let's go ahead and put that here as well. I did not copy it. There we go. And then let's bring in errors as well as set errors. And then let's also import our Flash component as well. There we go. So here is our login component. Okay, so let me show you how this would work. Yeah, let's run our servers. Let me log out. And for example, if I go ahead and log in with a user that hasn't been created yet, it will give me an error. But before, it will just console log me that error. But then as a user, I won't check my console. But now, because we set up Flash messages, it will show up as a Flash message. So let me do like test32 at test.com and then do password. So I know that there is no test32 because I haven't created that yet. And then I'll have the password here. So if I click submit, that will go ahead and trigger an error. Let me see what's going on. And yep, unpermitted parameters. And that should trigger my Flash message. I don't know why it's not. Yeah, I think that might be something inside of the auth. Let me see what's going on. So let me put a debugger here in the login, and let's see if this is correct. So let's do that again of test32 at test.com, and this will be password. And then if I submit, that should hit my debugger. So then what I get back when I get an error is this response right here. And it is a bunch of information that we have. But the one that I need is inside of this response here. So it'll be res.response like so. Oh, I don't know why I got out of my debugger. Let me do that one more time. There we go. So then, yeah, so now if I do res.response, it will give me all of this information. The one that I am wanting is the one inside of data. So that's why it is res.response.data. So that's why it's called res.response.data. So then if I do res.response.data, that will give me this errors here. So this errors is what I actually want. And it looks like I don't need full messages. So yeah, so here it would be res.response.errors or response.data errors and then the first item of that array, that's the one that I want. So it looks like I don't need full messages here. So then, yeah, so then that should be good. But then let me try this other case here of if I were to do like test2 at email.com and then do password, that should also give me the same error as well. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it looks like I don't need the full messages here. So that's for a handle login. So let's try that again. And I'll check the register to see if that's the same case. So let's do test32 again. And we'll do password. And I'm just going to pass this. And then there is our Flash message there. So it says invalid login credentials, please try again. Because there is none with that email or password. So yeah. So yeah, I did have a typo here. So I just removed that. Let me double check if that is the case for the register. And to see if that is also the case there. So how to do the register is that we need to create a user that already has the same email. So let's quit out of this. This one will be test to at email.com, which already exists in my database. So I'm just gonna do that real quick, and then this will be password and password. So yeah, this email has already been taken. So it looks like this one is good here. Okay, so yeah, so that looks good. Might need to do that here as well. So yeah, let me re-slack out the auth provider here. I did have a typo for one of them, like so. Oh man. Did that weird format again. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so that will be Flash messages. So that should work there. And then if you didn't put in the right stuff, it should give us a Flash messages as well. Sweet. So that's what we'll be doing. And a lot of our error handling is that we'll be going ahead and doing our set errors here as well for our Flash messages. Oh, you can go ahead and remove the debugger. I left the debugger in there. So yeah, that's what we will leave off of for now. Tomorrow, what we are going to do is that I'll actually show you what will have happen is that we'll go ahead and we'll have stuff be in one more level down. So we're actually going to be building a kind of like a pet store where a user has many cats. And then with those cats, we can go ahead and add, create, update, and then we'll also review some context API stuff with that as well. So the main thing is to kind of see how that relationship is with the user, even though that the user is mostly handled within device. So I'll kind of show you that there. And then after that, we'll go ahead and we'll review some stuff, and then we'll also style some stuff as well, because I do have a wireframe of what that will look like there. So let's go ahead and let's push up one more time, and then that is where we will leave off for the night. So let's go ahead and do a get add. And then we'll do a get commit -m of added Flash messages. And then we'll do a get push origin main. Keep this project around because we will be working on this tomorrow and continuing off of this project here. But yeah, if you don't have anything else, I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.